So we're going to move to a retrospective. The link to the retrospective is in the Manila channel. And the idea is that we will look back on the previous cycle and note things that that went well and that we want to keep doing, some areas for improvement, and so on. Let me get on the right link myself for a moment. So the first category is things that, and feel free to add as we're going along. The first category was things we want to keep doing because they went well. So the first bullet there is that the bug smash, which we hadn't been doing in previous releases in the same way, was I think, a success. And there were 2 bug smash events I put this one in, but that I had in mind. One is that we actually had one in the, it wasn't set up as a North American bug smash, but it was just run out of the Manila channel, and we did it in pretty much North American time zone, kind of unconsciously as more than anything else. And that was somewhat successful, but the really notable one for me was the bug smash. I think it was the 7th one that's been run in China in Wuhan. Maybe Sean can tell us about it a little more, but from a quantitative standpoint, there were, 7 or 8 companies participating in Manila? Pardon?
The bug smash day. How many companies you said?
Maybe 5.
Maybe 5 or something, but there were a lot of Manila bugs being addressed in that bug smash. So it was really, for me, it opened my eyes to the amount of interest that there is in Manila, not just at Huawei, but at 4 other companies, Fiber Home.
There are Fiber Home and China Mobile, and OpenStack.
Yes.
A small Chinese company.
And Nandan Cloud.
Yeah, and the Nine Cloud. Yeah.
And
I think there were some Foxconn people too, maybe.
And another cloud. And they also have their, and some of the companies have their public cloud, but it's just only in China. And in their website, all of it is Chinese. So they already used in the public.
Yeah. So both from a practical standpoint of actually getting bugs fixed, and from a point of view of perhaps educating the people who over here have been traditionally working on Manila, I think that was a tremendous success. Hey, Ben, welcome. Well, you come in late, you don't get a place at the table, man. No, good to see you. Thanks. There's the spot right here, if you would like it. So Ben Schwartzlander has joined us. We just finished doing introductions and we're just starting the retrospective. So Ben, in some ways, may need no introduction, but I think we ought to take a second. Not everybody knows Ben because we have new people in the room, which is awesome. But Ben was been started Manila and has been
Yeah.
PTL forever.
Founder and PTL up until now.
Among other things. And one of the things I'm looking forward to is that Ben no longer has to play fair because he's not PTL. All I'm saying is that he can be as opinionated as he wants to and no holds barred about different technical issues and so on. And has some talents as technically as well as an administrator. So it will be awesome to have his participation at that level. You also are our AV guy, I see. We're actually using Blue Jeans at the moment. We were messing with Hangouts and had some challenges. So we joined Blue Jeans and are switching mics to the person talking, so that way we can follow the conversation around the room.
Will it record?
Yes, I record.
Oh,
And we're recording.
Yeah,
okay.
maybe, like, I could join and use your
Yeah, do you want to try to use the better mic?
So we could use a single microphone.
That would be great.
Okay.
And we can still switch, when the talker can still unmute from time to time if they need to. I will turn it off for the main one if we're picking up the sound fine. We have Gotham on right now. Tommy, shoot the picture right now.
Yeah.
Is that the same? Oh, yeah, you're the one who connected an RTP, right? Yeah. Let me see if I can get it to work.
All right, I hate to be disruptive.
No, this is fine. My mic is unmuted at the moment, but I can. So if you will be audible at the moment. Not that Gotham's never heard you before anyway, but.
Hey, Gotham. I almost broke my toe last night. And I couldn't sleep.
So you're visiting pubs late? Or, no, I'm teasing you. You stubbed your toe off. Oh, that's awful. Painful. Hey, Patrick, there's a seat over here.
I have power splitters.
The part that keeps them using.
So perhaps it's time for me to start whining to the, saying we need a bigger room. No, but this is awesome that we've got. Patrick, would you briefly, we just did introductions. Would you briefly just tell people who you are? Since we're not going to introduce everybody back to you right now, but we can wait a second while the hubbub.
Oh, I have.
It could take.
Gautam, you can go back to sleep for a little bit, and we'll wake you up in a minute.
I'm doing reviews.
Oh, and by the way, I will take the opportunity while we have a little bit of a lull to extend congratulations publicly to Gautam on his recent marriage. We're all drinking virtual champagne here to celebrate.
Or Irish coffee. Thank you, Tom.
No, so it's the first time I think I've been at a PTG where Gautam is not physically present for Manila, but he has a pretty good excuse this time.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah, the good thing about using this is we have one more. Yeah, we have more for other people.
We have a remarkable demonstration of Manila teamwork going on at the moment.
I brought a whirlwind with me.
Our business is software, not hardware.
So they get the infantry there.
At least it's not like that.
Ben, do you know Magnus?
No,
No, so he just came, may be of interest to you among other people, but works for Ericsson, and they have 2 clouds that they're running right now with about 50 compute nodes. They're planning on scaling them up to about 100 compute nodes,
Okay.
and they're considering deploying Manila.
Yeah, it might be.
Who else is? Do you know Amit, the man who's about as tall as you are, and from Infinidad?
It does?
The fellow at the end, Giulio Fidente, who is our O wizard among other things, and he actually used to work on Sender a long time ago, right? But now he is knows all about deploying stuff beyond DevStack, shall we say? You know, I mean, he's my go-to man for O and Ceph and deploying stuff within Red Hat at scale. So you guys tell me when you think we should pick up again.
You want to connect back here?
Gonna make things worse.
No,
Bring the hardware.
Yeah, we just haven't.
No, did you actually start with the retro already? Or?
We were just starting, but we were on the first item, so we're having a hiatus while we resolve our technical issues, and then we will back up one step and introduce Patrick Donnelly, since he just came in as well.
Yeah, it's not working. Yeah. There we go. All right.
Okay.
Please, let's move to Bluetooth.
Okay, almost there. This is good. You need a team building exercise first thing.
Yeah.
I'm gratified I'm not participating in it.
How about the speaker? Is this a speaker as well?
It can be. Yeah.
Okay.
Speaker, microphone, camera, all 3.
One second.
Oh, actually, you needed to remove your speaker, your audio, mute your audio.
It's
Okay.
off now, I believe.
So should be picking up.
So Gotham would wake up and say something?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can.
Yeah, but it's repeating what we're saying.
Yeah, now I just turned my mic off as well. Can you hear me from this end?
Yep, can still hear you.
Wow.
Awesome.
Good.
Okay, we're doing introductions. Patrick, could you just quickly introduce yourself?
Okay, Patrick Donnelly, been with Red Hat almost 2 years, the CEPFest team lead, and I'm working with Manila folks to get CEPFest more integrated, and HA with Ganesha as an NFS friend.
You work on Ganesha NFS too?
Not myself, not good at it. One of the people in my team does.
I've been on that mailing list for a couple of years now. Very busy doing it.
So we have in the Manila channel the retrospective Etherpad, and we were just starting to talk about the first thing that, under the things that went well category. And people should feel free to add, if there are some other things that went well, you can still have an opportunity to add them. If you think of things later that we don't talk about, and you think they're worth discussing, we can pick them up in the weekly meeting. So you can still note them on here and maybe ping me or something so we can make sure and talk about them if we need to. But the first thing we talked about was the Bug Smash events. And we had a Bug Smash, which I think was relatively successful it was effectively in North America because it was run out of the normal working hours.
I think that around the end of Queens, right? When was the
It was,
it was a while ago.
yeah, it was a while ago. I think it was around milestone 2-ish, after 2 and before 3. And then we talked briefly about the Bug Smash, the Wuhan Bug Smash in China, which was immensely successful, and where most of us in this room, with the notable exception of Tommy and June, didn't have any immediate participation or involvement, but there were at least 5 companies fixing Manila bugs.
Yes.
And in my view, this is something that went very well and that we want to do again and figure out how to improve upon it and grow. So I put that as a bullet here.
We did it before the holidays, right?
I think so.
That's why it feels so long ago. Yeah.
And as noted there, we have participation from Huawei, of course, but 99 Cloud, Fiber Home, China Mobile, OpenStack, and so on. So these are all potential contributors to Manila going forward. It'd be nice to have. Chun was noting that a couple of these companies run public clouds in China and so on. So is there more you wanted to say about it now?
I just want more people could enjoy the Bug Smash maybe in China. And last time we joined in Bug Smash, but not more review on the Bug Smash. So I think maybe we could take more people to review the Bug Smash.
Yes, and what we can do, I think, is partly, I know you communicated to us that it was happening, but I think we can, now that we're more aware of it and of the benefits from it, we can probably try to bring attention to the core review team and stuff.
The China one was on top of the US holiday. I think that's what made it a challenge.
It was around Thanksgiving, I think.
Yeah. I remember because I specifically tried to do a lot of reviews, but it was running right up against the holiday.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do reviews on Thanksgiving.
Well, that's because he watches football.
Yeah, maybe we could consider about the time.
Yeah, does it make sense to try to have one international Bug Smash, or does it make sense to have 2 separate events?
Or if you have 2 separate in consecutive days, for example, you do first in China and then the other one in the US.
Just maybe coordinate them so not everyone's online at the same time.
Yeah, no, of course, the China one is not just Manila, so it's a much bigger, if one were to suggest scheduling or something, it's a much bigger issue than just us. So in the meantime, my thought is for the next cycle of partly, we'll try to talk about it more up front and get more review attention as we know it's going to overlap with a holiday. We'll communicate that and talk about that and so on.
Yeah, and the feedback to whoever's organizing, the event in China is you want reviews, be cognizant of the holidays in the rest of the world.
Yeah, of course, we can get feedback saying if you're going to end your development cycle, don't do it right on Chinese New Year.
Is that what happened this summer?
Yeah, if you think about it, the end of Queens was pretty much overlapped with.
But that was past the RC.
Right past the RC, right? Can you talk a little bit about how the RC timing and specs and so on, and Chinese New Year, of course, goes on a whole month, doesn't it?
Yeah. Half months.
Half
Chinese,
month?
yeah.
The last half of February this year, right? The
Yeah.
second half of February.
It's actually not the worst time to have a holiday.
No.
Because you're past the feature freeze, most of the bugs, but yeah, if you have any late minute showstoppers, people on vacation.
Yeah. I'm mostly making it a joke, but I'm saying it's challenging when you work around the whole world to coordinate these things. Okay, so any more on Bug Smash?
No.
Okay, I added another. I didn't add all these. I just started primed the pump, as it were. I thought the bug czar role in the weekly meeting slot for going over bugs, it was a good thing, and we have more attention to at least the current bugs coming in. Dustin, who is a QE guy, is a good person to look at bugs and triage them and bring them to our attention.
I'm guessing Dustin's on the line with us.
Dustin didn't elect to wake up yet.
Okay. He couldn't come here in person.
Yes, it is.
I guess the thing I would say about the bug smash is I did notice that in some of the meetings it took up like more than half the meeting. I don't know how people think that's productive use of everyone's time. Initially when we talked about the bug smash, the option was you could do separate meetings. We said, well, let's try to do it in the regular meeting. It worked okay for me, but if it does start taking up too much time, one option is get the people who are interested in bugs together in a separate meeting and then just have a readout during the weekly meeting.
Another thought too is that if anyone else is interested in working on that, along with Dustin, I think he's still interested in doing it, then I think he would be open to having like a pre-meeting with a couple other people or one other person that could help triage some of the stuff before the regular meeting. We could still have a briefer time in the meeting for talking about the results or if anybody else has feedback on them.
Sometimes they're really controversial bugs. Right. It's worth discussing.
And then sometimes it's like, oh yeah, this one was already documented. So it was a doc fix bug, and we already wrote the documentation, so we can just close it.
Yeah.
We probably don't all need to talk about that if it could be done more efficiently.
Well, yeah, but we go through those very quickly, and it's good to remind people that those things are still open and need to be closed.
All in all, I would say it's a good thing so far.
Yeah, and the amount it takes, the amount of time it consumes varies a lot with the amount of bugs and their complexity, and it does not impact when we don't have as many topics to discuss in the weekly meeting. So
if it starts taking too long or people feel like it's something that we could do more efficiently elsewhere, then let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think so far it's okay, right?
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, and we specifically put it at the end of the agenda so that it doesn't take away time from anything else.
Come on in. This is Keith Schenke. I may be mispronouncing your last name, but
it always gets mispronounced.
Keith is an expert on deployment and SEP and so on, and works for Red Hat. Anything else you want to tell us about yourself quickly?
Not yet.
Not yet? All right. All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're doing a retrospective at the moment. And we're on next item, Gonzo. Keep doing well. Talk to it, please, where you're going.
Try to cut the tag earlier than the deadline. This is what we've been doing for the past 2 releases, and it's been good because sometimes we have some things to merge at the last minute, and it's good to be doing that before the Thursday deadline.
You're talking about the milestones? Or
Yeah, the milestones.
Yeah.
Okay. And we will talk about the schedule as I think it's coming up soon.
Yeah.
But basically, you're okay with what we have been doing in terms of cutting the tax.
Yeah, there is the drawback that we have like 3 or 4 less days to work on stuff, but it's worth it. Definitely worth it.
Other people have remarks on this?
The main thing is in any sort of published deadlines, you state Monday is the cutoff, and then you aim for Monday or Tuesday to actually have it done. That's up to detailed discretion, but you actually.
But what he's saying is that it seemed to work well.
Yeah.
So we have a kind of a soft deadline that's before the real deadline. Soft might be the wrong word, but it's a crisp deadline that we can still play with a little bit. Okay. Anything else we? We already mentioned a little bit, but reviewers weren't available during the Wuhan bug smash. Anything else to speak to on that from the left side of the column?
People able to get changes reviewed in general? Did anyone feel like they were waiting a long time to get reviewed?
Yeah.
You did? And you were asking for us to do reviews in channel, and we were just slow, right? So you were doing the right thing to just go out and ask if you're not getting reviews.
Right, and in that position, not as a core reviewer, but as somebody trying to get core review attention, my experience was mostly back in center. I felt that I really shouldn't have to go ping people to get reviews. In other words, I did have to do that, and I had to nag people. But I would love to have a project where reviews just got done without having to go through special pleading. I don't think we're there. And I would just say, my point of view is, and I don't have the answer as to how to make this happen right now, but my point of view is that you should, a well-run machine would work where people, reviews just happen.
Yeah, okay. I think we need if the only problem is notification, like sometimes I want to do reviews, but I'm not aware of things that need a lot of attention. I know there are patches being submitted, but sometimes people ping me, oh, could you please review this patch? And then, how come that slipped by? I did not see that patch being submitted and stuff. So
you know how to create dashboards in Garrett where you can see all the.
Yeah, there is that mechanism, and I was going to mention that Garrett also notifies you when you put your name on the watch list for that entry, but you need to do that manually. But on the next section, we have some items regarding that is having a priority to-do list that people could an Etherpad or a thread-like system that we could put items that should have review attention from the community and something people would look at.
We didn't do that in Queens. We've done that in prior releases, and that's something that comes from.
Yeah, but we do that only in feature freezes and.
But I mean, we didn't even do that. So.
Yeah.
That was a helpful mechanism in past releases.
I agree with that.
We could expand it to early releases for at least for big things.
Yeah, I think we should have it during the whole release. Like, if something requires a lot of attention.
The thing is that there's a administrative overhead to putting that Etherpad together and keeping it up to date. Someone would have to volunteer to own that.
So I'm willing
What if it's
to
collaborative?
try to do it. okay. I don't know how much bandwidth I will have or not to keep it up to date. So why don't I try?
Okay.
And then why don't, if I start falling behind, then why don't we talk about how to share the load, delegate, whatever word we want to do. You know, just like we have bazaars or whatever, we could potentially we could even rotate duty if we need to or whatever. But I'm willing to try to start to do it. I think Sean McGinnis did a fairly good job of that in Sender.
Well, certainly, if you're not getting the results you want, that's something that they're doing. But I would say, ideally, people can figure it out between themselves and Garrett what he's reviewing.
Well, and sharing best practice on dashboards may be a good thing too. So
yeah.
if core reviewers, if somebody has a good dashboard that they're using as a core reviewer, we could talk about it in the weekly meeting and say, you know, I'm using this one.
The thing is, Garrett cannot dictate what is high priority or not.
Right.
So what I was thinking is that
So you only
I actually remember the specific discussion from Sender, which was one of the problems with sharing a dashboard idea is that if everyone has the same idea of what's high priority, then everyone ends up reviewing the same patches. It's somewhat better if different people have different ideas of what's high priority and they tackle different changes.
so people need to agree on what's high priority, and in that case, I think the PTL or someone that the person may volunteer, like the bug Caesar, would dictate what is high priority, and people would go through the items in an order like a to-do list. You know, so once the first item is reviewed, the person could proceed to the next one.
So the PTL can offer their view of what priority.
Yes.
So partly just a matter of I wouldn't use the word dictate. Maybe in the sense of dictate that somebody else can write it down and say this is what you said, but not in the sense that we can actually decide the priorities. So the PTL can offer, in this case, his view of the priorities and may have some influence.
Mm-hmm.
Other people will have some other ideas of priorities.
Mm-hmm.
On the side, priority may be the independent out driver reviews and
Yeah.
you know, her spec, you know, that she put up. So I think we'll have a variety of priorities. The prioritization really only becomes a big issue if you have to triage, you have to push something out, right? If you can get everything done, then you don't have to prioritize it in the same way. We don't have all that many reviews compared to Nova or Sender. We have many fewer reviewers. The ratio to core reviewers and core reviewer throughput's another question. You know, we can figure it out. But let's continue. Let's start by sharing some dashboards. I will try to share a PTL perspective periodically on what our backlog is and what I think, you know, it's been sitting there too long and deserves attention, or you know, what's high priority even though it's new. And other people will express their opinions. So we can say, you know, Tom thinks that's really important, but you know, everybody's free to ignore the PTL anyway.
The thing Cinder did was like, because people do have different priorities, especially different companies get different things. On that Etherpad of priorities, people like cores would go and kind of like sign up for one of the things. And it helps with that, like, you don't want 8 people reviewing one patch.
That's right.
Yes.
That's why it helps leave that a little bit. If you see like, oh, there's already 2 or 3 people
looking at that. I don't know.
It was kind of it was like an opt-in thing, so it moved a lot of that detail dictating, go over do this thing.
Yeah. So if anybody has a pointer to an old Sender one that Sean did or something, please share it with me at some point.
Dashboard?
Yeah. I may have it.
Like an Etherpad.
Yeah, there was an Etherpad.
There's a review dashboard too.
Or the review, though. I mean, all of it.
Well,
You know.
we used to do those every third milestone.
Right. So if you would push those things at me, I'll try to sort it through a couple of them, and then we can share them with the group.
I have another idea in order to reduce reduce the amount of effort from a single person. That would be making that Etherpad partially collaborative. Like you were mentioning the part of nagging people in RC when the person needs to have a patch reviewed. that person could just add to an item in this Etherpad that's to be validated, to be prioritized. And then the PTL would only pick items from this list. That means that someone submitted a patch that is important, I would say, and wants to have it reviewed as soon as possible. So that person is already including the patch in this Etherpad to be processed. And then the person that will prioritize it would pick from there and put in the
So we're
priority
gonna have
list.
like a backlog section.
Yes,
Perhaps at the
but
bottom. And any, I mean, the Etherpad's writable by everybody anyway, but
Yeah.
the point is that you would,
we would avoid the things that go into Garrett, but they are not as important as things that would be inserted into this Etherpad, you know? So
so it shows at least that the person took the initiative to put it in.
yes, exactly.
Okay, I think we can certainly have I would be inclined to call it backlog.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, everything should be considered, whether it's written there or not, but it calls attention to it.
Yeah.
So we have a section for action items on here, and it seems to me like we came up with a couple of action items right now. So they were that Tom is going to develop an Etherpad with a review / priority Etherpad or something like that. And then I believe Ben was going to share with me any past artifacts that he may have that might be handy for this, either Etherpads of this sort or Garrett. Yeah. Those dashboards. Were there other things that came out of that right now?
I was just wondering about the priority, the launchpad priority isn't that work for us? So it has the
We triage bugs regularly and assign them launchpad priorities. And then there's also blueprints, right? It's for the proactive work.
Yeah, but I don't know
If you want to use Launchpad as a way to drive the project, it does have mechanisms for targeting bugs, setting priorities, targeting blueprints, setting priorities. A long time ago, we did that more reliably, like during Queens and even during those past several releases. I haven't put everything on Launchpad. I use Garrett as my place to start for reviews.
And isn't there an idea that we're going to be using Storyboard instead of Launchpad?
Yeah, it seems like Launchpad's going to die.
So it seems maybe that investing in Launchpad is not really the way to go right now, particularly.
Well, I mean,
unless we're already.
Launchpad is known to work. I don't know if the same is true of Storyboard.
I'm just saying, I'm not even arguing for one versus the other. I'm just saying the wind has shifted towards Storyboard and the overall OpenStack project. I don't think we're ready. I'm not suggesting right now that we go adopt it for Manila. I'm just thinking maybe we just use an Etherpad for now and see what happens with Storyboard.
Okay. Well, the one place
Launchpad's going to die on us anyway.
Well, Launchpad's never going to go away. I mean, you get that it was just that the community didn't want to have a dependency on this tool that's owned by Canonical. That's what it came down to. Okay. And there's no ability to influence how the tool works.
Yeah, because Launchpad is the same since like 5 years ago.
Yeah, Launchpad is what it is, and it's going to keep being what it is.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough, then it's good enough. But we use it in particular for things like RC targeted bugs. You know, because when we release the RC, when the number of bugs gets to 0, we use Launchpad to track.
Yes.
You know, whether or how many bugs are targeted or not.
Yes, actually, I think it works for the RC deadlines because we are looking at a single unit that we are worried about, which are bugs. But when we are during the release, we have bugs, blueprints. We have other patches that don't need like test patches, so they don't need bug entries.
Not every review is currently reflected in that.
Exactly.
Now we could move to requiring that more, but I think it's nice to have trivial fixes, for instance, just without having to pay the overhead.
Yeah.
And even things that are, I'm not sure that every API reference document fix is worth it's nice to get them done and get them through. And maybe even to put them on an Etherpad if they're not getting the attention that they should get. But I don't know that it's, we'll figure it out, but I'm not sure, I'm not convinced at this point that making a formal system where we have to put everything in Launchpad and prioritize it.
My question comes only because I see that there's Launchpad and nobody uses, and why not?
Well, for the first few releases, we used it religiously, and I was going to say, if people know that that's where reviewers go to have a review, then they will put their stuff in Launchpad. They know that's how they get the attention they want. So it's just a question of making sure that we have a tool and that people know what it is and that people will use it. And it can be Launchpad. It could be Launchpad. It does, right? And for these blueprints and bugs, for trivial fixes and stuff, they will not show up in Launchpad. But for trivial fixes,
I think we started using blueprints as the spec process came in. Like
that's true.
Like most projects started using specs, and just relying on that and stuff, following things on blueprints for on project.
The problem with specs is you get the spec merged and then you tend to forget about the
code. Well, maybe let's just say let's figure it out. Okay, I mean we're probably not going to settle a priori. It partly is going to depend on, frankly, part of it's going to depend on my disposition if I'm doing all this, so what I'm inclined to do. And the next PTL might want to keep track of stuff another way. But I hear you, Erlon, and I'll look at it. Maybe we'll use Launchpad more. But probably starting with an Etherpad, and then if it can wither away and we'll use Launchpad for everything, that would be cool. We didn't put anything under stop doing. It surprises me. Pardon? Yeah. It surprises me that we have a retrospective, even though we're all really feeling that this morning about ourselves, that we would, maybe we phrased everything that we need to improve, we need to start doing something. But is there anything we're doing right now that we shouldn't continue to do? Or even that we should start, I mean, I would like,
I added a comment about the documentation. It's not like something that we should stop doing. It's more like something that should be improved.
Yes.
But it's another topic of discussion. I'm not sure it should be discussed now.
Well, let's put it, but once you note it under the start, if you add a bullet under the start doing, and then we will discuss it as its own item.
Okay.
Item, since you put it in there, but we can have it here as well. You can note that we'll discuss it, but driver documentation, and you're a good person to address that because you just went through the experience. So, anything else for the retrospective then, or do we want to?
Did you skip the more off? Did you skip the more off section?
Did we skip more off? Perhaps. Stop skipping the more off section. I guess I did. Gonzo, you're up.
All right. So I think we should pay a little more attention to the upstream gate testing in two ways, I would say. One, improve it, like take a look and see what drivers are relevant to test certain features, and maybe have only those features running in that job, so they don't run jobs that we don't think are worth to be tested under with that driver. So it does not fail us that much, and we can count them as voting. Like the generic driver is the only one that tests a certain feature. Let's make it voting, but let's make it run maybe only that feature so it doesn't overlap with features that are run by other drivers. Because currently it's non-voting and sometimes it fails and it picks up problems in the patch that is about to merge, and it slips by. And the other item would be to also take a look at the logs instead of just looking at success, because sometimes your test has been skipped or it hasn't run, and you're submitting a patch that is making changes but is not being tested anywhere. And I sometimes I see that happening, and sometimes we just ignore some CI results and merge anyway. So I think what CI results that we are enforcing right now, the policy that we have, we should enhance it a little bit, I would say. And maybe we could accomplish that by having another item that I put down in the list below, which would be the checklist for contributors and reviewers.
Where do you have the checklist?
It's in the start doing.
Start doing. Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome. Are you volunteering to draft one? I mean, I'm not to do it by yourself, but to get us started.
Yeah, maybe I can come up with an Etherpad collaboratively and put up some items, and we could review it in a weekly meeting.
Okay, so would you add that as an action item?
Right.
The risk, of course, in doing retrospectives is we all talk and nod our heads, and then we talk about it again at the next cycle. So I don't want to punish people who have good ideas by making them do it all. But if you would just get us kick-started on it, that would be great. I think it's an awesome idea.
Add it there.
So who put in the community-driven bug smashes here is more of this. We've talked about this a little bit. Is there more to? We want to increase participation and say how. And we want to bring the bug list before the bug smash. I think we talked about that a little bit. I think partly it's a matter of the PTL and other people that have been with the project and are experienced resolving to talk about it and bring attention to the bug smash. Perhaps talk with if there's going to be a bug smash in China, for instance, that we would have an explicit conversation with John as an ambassador about here's the bugs we think are really important and that type of thing, so that there's this conversation about priorities and so on. And anything more on that one?
Thank you.
Okay. I had one to stop doing, and I have to figure out how we can do this practically. We can resolve. You have a problem. You submit a patch, and it fails, and you think it has nothing to do with your patch, but it's something that's failing over and over and over again, and we say the natural tendency is you want to get your patch in. And you say reject until someday it passes. The underlying problem is not fixed. Now, the challenge here is to figure out how to get some kind of constructive action on this without putting it all on the shoulders of the person that's just trying to get their patch through. Right? So I got a new whiz-bang backend. I changed my a driver patch, and my product manager is telling that, why isn't it done yet, and so on. And it's not passing CI because something's wrong, and because we made the generic driver voting again, because we want to catch real problems. And sure enough, it's catching some problem It's an intermittent problem. It happens 1 out of 4 times, or 3 out of 4 times.
That's not
And,
intermittent.
well, whatever. You know, it happens intermittently. And I, as the poor whiz bang guy, am hitting it 99 out of 100 times, you know, and I can't get CI to pass, but I just sit there and what I'm going to do is just sit there and say recheck 100 times till it passes. Unless, is there some way I can constructively report the issue and get community engagement on it? The whiz-bang driver guy shouldn't have to fix the generic driver just in order to get his whiz-bang driver merged. But on the other hand, it's not very socially responsible to just ignore the general issue too. If people have ideas about what we can do to help with that situation.
So what I usually did was to try and read the logs of the test that failed. That was after the first few times which I just logged into IRC and asked you or someone who was around what's going on, and sometimes also the title of the IRC channel changed, and there's also this Twitter channel that says what's the status of the Zool gates.
Yes.
But I didn't know about this at start, so I only rechecked. And I think it will be really helpful if there is an option to only recheck the gates and not recheck the whole third-party CIs. So when I write recheck, it won't run.
Yeah, is
the
there a way to
operation.
do that? Recheck should not trigger third-party CIs.
But it does because
That's a problem with a third-party CI. If someone just types recheck, third-party CI should not pick that up and run again.
The default third-party CI configs do that, but like
they do that
you just go
because
grab the thing from upstream.
you have it in the YAML thing by default.
I thought when we talked about third-party CIs, we discussed it.
I mean, most third-party CIs right now, they only pick up patches when Zool +1. And
No,
there are
I'm
some
talking about common triggers. The official rule is
Oh, I
you say
see.
run like NetApp CI, the NetApp CI should run.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also
CI.
triggers for recheck. It triggers most of them.
But
NetApp used to trigger on recheck, and
Yeah.
somebody went and changed it, so it doesn't.
Yes.
So that's on the third-party CIs. They should not.
So
run
how do
recheck.
we get that best practice? It sounds like there's no way to fix it globally. Each third-party CI has to fix it themselves.
Yeah, if they're listening for the recheck, then we can't do anything. about
Yeah,
that.
what if they're just not concerned with their CPU cycles?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Who cares if they run again? It's just wasted CPU cycles on the part of that third-party
Yeah.
CI.
Yeah. What's the concern about doing the recheck? Because some people
No,
just
my
don't
concern,
know.
my concern was about not addressing the underlying issue.
Mhm.
Okay, so that was less about the
I think-
third-party CIs.
I think it would be
Third-party
helpful if
CIs are not voting.
I think it would be helpful if some of the logs would be less cryptic. I mean, you need to scroll down really far away in some of the logs to actually find what the issue is.
We have a log problem. I don't know if you are aware, but it seems that those filters that we have to show only error warnings, they're not working anymore for some reason. For Cinder, they are working. It seems that there has been a Oslo log change not far back, and our logs stopped
I'd
working.
like to know why that's, that's happened like a year ago.
Yeah,
The filter stopped working and I was like,
So it's way prior to Zool V3 conversion and stuff. It doesn't have anything to do with that.
I wouldn't say that for sure, but yeah, there's something suspicious.
So Manila is screwed up and Cinder works.
yeah.
not acceptable.
No, I mean, no. I mean, probably Cinder got screwed as well, but they fixed it maybe. That's why it's working. So maybe nobody from our community took note of that.
Let's see, who in this room works in both communities? Airlone, Tommy. I'm not going to punish Patrick yet because we want to keep him happy. But it seems to be nice to have an AI from this where somebody can find out how it got fixed in Cinder and we could steal it back from them. I will take it if nobody else does, wants to volunteer. But it seems like we need to ask Senator about this problem. It's not an interesting factor.
I would guess like Jay or Sean.
Sean would be able to tell us. Okay, I'll pick the AI to chase it.
Okay, I'll put your name on it.
Thank you. That's my job to do stuff like that. I put down blind rechecks as a problem. So that's related. The blind recheck thing, this is a bigger problem. So improving the logging, this is one aspect of improving the logging, as far as we went off on that. Another thing, I guess, is I would just ask, it may be a matter of developing a culture where we, hey, Walt, come on. There's a chair here. We were just talking about we're doing a retrospective. We were talking about blind rechecking and improving logs. And one of the remarks came up was that Manila logs, for some reason, no longer filter correctly on the error and so on. And the sender fixed that problem. So, and it's got the AI to go talk to sender people about who knows who fixed that. So I'm just mentioning it in case the sender person has the answer. Yeah, okay. We'll follow it up on it. Anything else we want to have in the stop doing category chat about? Oh, I was saying on the blind recheck one, partly we just need to develop a culture. So that means that we talk about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Amit did a good job of this actually, of not being shy of pinging people in channel and saying, look, I hit this issue. What do I do? And we're not going to necessarily be able to turn every issue at the moment into a solution. Maybe I can try to maintain a bit of a backlog of issues, as they come up.
Yeah, I think the minimum that could be done is that if the person stumbled on a CI that is failing randomly, it's not related to that patch that failed on, maybe it could report the bug. That would be the first step. And then if we have that Etherpad, it could be top priority because we should try to keep the CI green.
Yeah, and try. Yes, well, we should try to keep the CI green, of course, but it's not always going to be. The question is how we make progress, towards that goal, rather than just, staying in the same cycle.
Yeah.
So I think if we talk about it, we open bugs, and then we encourage the PTL to do or whoever's working with the PTL to do the administrative work of maintaining that backlog, then we can see if we're making progress on it. Instead of part of the frustrating thing with the kind of thing is you go ahead and look at progress. Anything else on this? Maybe we should stop doing too much time on retrospective and move on to the next agenda item, which is Rocky deadlines review. So I put in the links to the Queen schedule here, which had the Manila deadlines added to it, and the new Rocky schedule. And my proposal would be that unless someone wants to propose an alternative and can argue for it and convince us, that we should keep the same deadlines as we had in the last cycle. Last time we kept the same ones as in the previous cycle because we thought they were working pretty well. And I think 2 cycles back, we made changes in light of previous experience. Is anyone unhappy with the current deadlines that we have and want to change them? Pardon?
What are the current deadlines?
Oh, yeah. So the current deadlines, if you look at the link for the Queen's schedule here on line 70 of the Etherpad, then Ben did a good job, if I recall, of noting that at Queen's 1 milestone, which will now turn to Rocky milestone, would be proposed, that we have the spec freeze. And if we click on the spec freeze link, we see that the specs actually need to be approved by that date. Then the next one we see that would be relevant, just hypothetically for Pure, if they were submitting a new driver, is the driver submission deadline at Queens 2, milestone 2, which would be Rocky 2. And in that case, it's a driver submission deadline, and where that's defined is saying the driver needs to be substantially complete with unit tests and passing third-party CI. So that's similar to what Sender required in terms of, so it doesn't have to actually be merged until feature freeze, which I think we'll see is at Q3. But give some time. Your CI needs to be running your driver. I mean, what was your experience with these deadlines? Is it in terms of drivers? Is it okay for you? Everybody always wants more time, of course. But
Well, trying to think, there was one deadline I nearly missed. I think it was the feature proposal freeze. Yeah, but
I think you were quite concerned about one, and everybody kept telling you it was okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't communicate that well, or maybe you were just doing a really good job at triple checking.
Yeah, it was one that I was pretty concerned about, but in the end, we stood by the deadline. So, I mean, the code was up, it was just pending review and the third-party CI. So, I think it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about these deadlines is they're aligned with the project Q1, M1, M2, M3 type deadlines. So they're relatively easy for people to remember. We're not doing some offset from them. Yeah. And they've evolved at this point to have pretty crisp definitions. I mean, that wasn't always the case in any OpenStack project I've worked on, not just Manila.
Yeah, in addition,
Patrick, you're doing a new driver, or your people are. You can give it back to Simon. He's got to do it. But are you okay with these deadlines?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah.
It should be easy for us. We already have a new CI on.
Yeah. So if somebody doesn't have CI, that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Always is. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not hearing any proposal, any
Could we
concrete proposal that we change these deadlines right now. Sean, what were you going to say?
could we just move Manila spec freeze from our milestone 1 to milestone 2?
So we could consider that. And you have a couple of specs you're working on right now, so I understand why you're saying that.
Yeah, when I come back to China, it is almost a 1-3. So yeah, it's almost a milestone.
So what are people's thoughts about that?
So the tension is the later the spec merges, the less time you have to write code. I mean, in my ideal world, features are more or less designed and implemented the prior release. So like if you want to put a feature in Rocky, you do the work during Queens and then talk about it at the Rocky PTG, and you already have the spec and the prototype implementation, and that'll maximize the chance of it actually getting done in Rocky. If you haven't started writing it at the Rocky PTG, the chance of it getting in Rocky is going to be sketchy. I mean, people have done that kind of thing before.
I already write the spec.
Yeah, you've written the spec, and
but I just figure out if it could be moved to the milestone. It would be. But it's okay if we cannot move into the milestone.
Yeah, I'm inclined not to move the milestone. But what that means is that we all have to kind of teach our product managers. We have the same kind of issue that we tell them we need to be talking about this 6 months ahead of time if you want it on the next release. It's not something that we're for instance, Victoria's working on, you may not need another spec for this, we'll have to think it through, but, is working on metrics and extending the work that we've done previously. But this has been a conversation we've been having with product management for the last year or so. So if they spring something on, if the product manager says, we want you to go write a spec on something, and they tell you a week before Rocky starts, then we have to go back and tell them, look, it doesn't work that way. That's not going to be enough time for people to talk it through and understand the issue. Have the iterations and back and forth in the community. It's not like when we just work in our own company, coming up with something. So I'm not hearing, I understand why, if I were in your shoes right now, I understand why I would say, can I get a little more time to do this and figure it out? But I'm not hearing a general will for people wanting to do that.
Okay.
I actually don't mind extending that stuff because we've had times when I don't know we've given up on implementing features because we couldn't get the spec in by milestone 1. I know it's a hard call, but Cinder's been doing it all along, so I never understood why we had a really hard thing saying we'd have to cut it off at milestone 1.
One is milestone 2.
Yes, Cinder is milestone 2.
Problem they have though is like I feel like a lot of times we'll get a spec merged and the feature won't land, and then we have to go and like change it, and you get customers asking, oh look, there's a spec that got merged in this release, where's the feature? Like it turns into kind of like a whole other problem.
You have to move the spec to the next release.
Yeah, like it doesn't seem to really matter when you merge the spec. There's still going to be like 6 months after that before the code's in and everybody supports it and stuff, right?
Yeah, we made it clear in the past that merging the spec does not guarantee that your code merges.
Right.
So, but June is talking about the time that is to be able to merge the spec and also merge the code. So in the past, I think we contradicted ourselves a few times when we said that we wouldn't want to merge a certain spec because the spec was too broad and there was no code for it. But the person, one of the factors about being about writing a spec is that you may not want to spend effort writing the code if your spec is not going to be approved. So maybe changing the deadline of milestone 1 for specs to milestone 2, and also require some code at least to verify that the implementation works. Maybe we could work on that.
I was going to say that's kind of a bad attitude. I don't want to write the code if the spec is going to be approved. I mean, if you want the feature to get done, you're going to have to do both eventually. I mean, yeah, there's the question of prioritization. We're trying to do 3 different things, and only one between.
So Ben, I have a suggestion about the prioritization. So how about we say if your spec's not merged by milestone 1, then it cannot be a priority for this release. You can't expect reviewers to spend a lot of time as much as the high priority items are given.
Well, I guess I kind of think about it backwards. We wanted to put the default deadline at milestone 1 so that people would feel urgency around getting their specs done. But if there's something that the community agrees we all want to have happen, and the spec isn't done by milestone 1, we always have the discretion of the PTO to say, we'll give it some more time, right? If it's important,
Okay.
then you can grant an exception for specific items. But if you just blanket start, everything has until milestone 2, then you have no way of getting people to get started.
Yeah, I like the idea of figuring out whether the community agrees that it's a good idea by milestone 1. So, for example, my product manager may have an idea that I should be doing something, and I am bound as an employee of my company to advance that idea. And it may be that the community says, I don't really think that's a good idea. It's good for your back end only or something. And it's not really going to be a Manila thing. You guys should feel free to do it, market it, push it as an idea. And it can be done in a Manila context, but it's not going to be something that's part of Manila proper. Well, I think we should know that by milestone 1. Now, maybe we need some kind of leeway then that we say, okay, we got community agreement that this is an idea, good thing to pursue by milestone 1, but there's still some unresolved issues.
Yeah, maybe the spec does not be completed.
If they don't get resolved, we're not going to merge it in this cycle. We may push it out to the next cycle. So we need an ability to kind of provisionally approve specs at milestone 1 or something. I would like to have that. Maybe not everything's figured out that would go under the idea of a spec. There's still some open issues. Then I think at milestone 1 we could agree that we have.
Are you saying that the spec would not need to be merged? Are you saying that the spec wouldn't need to be merged by milestone 1, just agreed by, right?
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm saying is that if there are some
approve the broad idea, but not the specific design.
Do we agree we want to try to do this?
Yes.
Okay, and then that's one kind of agreement. Then
in this release,
right?
And then that's a good idea, but later,
right. But do we agree that we're probably, we're going to try to do this in this release? And then if we say yes, but we still think there's some unresolved issues in the spec, we think they're resolvable. But we have people arguing for alternative A and alternative B, and neither of them are crazy. We need to lock them in a room and let them figure it out, write down the spec what we're actually going to do, because it's going to be implemented. Every driver is going to have to change to do A or B. So we need to actually settle it and put it in the spec so people know what to do. But we just don't have agreement yet. Then in those cases, maybe it's PTL discretion that we just say we'll do it on that. But we can handle it by that. By PTL discretion, we're talking about really a conversation that we have where the PTL is responsible for saying, this is the will of the community. We're not doing a formal vote.
Yeah, along those lines, we could continue to do what we had done in the past. Ben remembers that we used to decide on milestone 1, decide the focus of the release. Like I remember Pike, we wanted to focus on IPv6. And there was something else, I don't remember which one it was, but there were other specs for the Pike release that we just said, we don't want to focus on that. So even though it merges, we don't want to focus or review effort on those features because the IPv6 had a higher priority.
So how do we address the issue Gotham brought up that things sometimes just get abandoned if they're not approved in that particular release? Do we want to maintain a backlog of good ideas that didn't make it into this release or something?
We could have a conversation and schedule it for the next release, so at least the person knows that the idea is approved and it is scheduled to be merged and in the next release. Because for that release, it wouldn't be the focus, maybe, depending on the feature, on the idea.
Yeah, I mean, Gotham, what do you think? I mean, my view is that whenever we have a deadline whether it's milestone 1 or milestone 2, we're going to always want more time. The person doing the spec is going to always want more time. And the product managers or whoever's coming up with the ideas they're always going to run into this issue, which is that you're going to have people from your company saying, why don't you do this? And they're going to ask it too late relative to the deadline that's coming up. So I don't actually think moving the deadline for M1 to M2 is going to improve the situation. I think it's just going to move it along when it happens. Okay. So if we keep it at M1 and we give you backing partly, that and it's me when I talk to my product manager, we say, look, the deadline is M1. They're not going to change that. So you need to start talking to me about it, so I can start talking to them about the committee about it.
Okay.
But then what we need to do is provide a way to get you feedback earlier. For example, you tried to talk to us about your spec 2 or 3 weeks ago. You tried to talk to me about it, and I was busy with RC stuff and different things. So I didn't really I didn't go read the spec yet and give you feedback in the earlier cycle. I said, okay, let's wait till Rocky.
Okay.
But now you didn't have the time to start talking. We're talking about spanning cycles and doing all that, but I'm picking on myself, but I don't think it was just me. Didn't give you early feedback that you would want with that model. So I think we need to somehow improve that if we're going to stick with M1.
Yeah, like we did before. And if this feature is really important, we could just extend maybe 1 weekend or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
After milestone 1, I agree with
So
that.
if we're going to keep it to milestone 1, we have to be actually willing to discuss the specs before Rocky starts.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at it, if the person's willing to post a blueprint back during Queens for Rocky early on, the way Shun was, then it needs to be, I don't know how to fix this for this release, but I'm just kind of committing to saying, okay, just like PTL responsibility to bring focus to things, we need to be able to drive a conversation around the spec earlier.
Okay.
That's what the Nova team does.
Does Nova do that?
Yeah, they are the first milestone when they're expected. All the stuff is due by that. So they have the conversations prior to that.
They had talked in the previous cycle about those things.
Yes, because the hope is that they'll be able to actually get the code to land before the end.
Well, that's the other side of it. We were talking before. So we want to land it in that release if we can, because otherwise we're in the situation Patrick was talking about, which is it's publicized that you have IPv6 support, but nobody is actually implemented in the driver.
That's frequently what we have in Cinder is that because it's the second milestone, we don't get cores paying any attention to them until the deadline comes up, and they're like, oh, then the person has no real time to actually finish that.
Now, I'm familiar with the Cinder, and Cinder has had a number of, I think the technical term is half-assed releases. New features. But I mean, where there's a new feature, there's a lot of buzz around it and so on, and there's no driver support, or there's basically some big unresolved issues that get implemented by one vendor one way and another vendor another way, and backends and so on. So it's not that having the earlier milestone solves that, but it helps with that issue.
Okay.
So, Shun, you have some specs up now. So let's do our best to get you early feedback and help you make the M1 deadline. If we think there's something we should do as a committee, we haven't had that conversation yet. So then we'll have part of it in this session. Okay, so I'm not hearing that we're going. I don't think we're inclined to change that right now, but we're inclined to try to recognize that there are challenges with whatever deadline we have, and try to address those constructively. Now, one of the challenges also Gotham brought up, and I didn't listen for his feedback after I asked for it, which was that stuff gets dropped if it doesn't make it in. If it doesn't get into R, then it's not going, people are going to forget about it by S, or they're going to have to start it all over again for S, and it doesn't happen. Gotham, do you have any ideas about how we can maintain a backlog of those, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, kind of a concern. I mean, turning off a new contributor or someone who's enthusiastic to bring in a feature, but can't work with our deadlines. But I guess it's something that I don't know, we can enforce and some other way keep their interest rather than mend deadlines for them.
Yeah, my thought is that we need to be very unambiguous in the way we communicate partly. We need to not just say, if we think something's not a good idea for a community feature, we need to be very direct about that and say that, and not say, oh, well, better luck next time, try again. We need to have that conversation and decide, is it something that's a good idea for Manila or not? Now, if it is a good idea for Manila or not, does it fit with our priorities for this release, and can we get it done now? So if it's not a good idea at all, then let's not put it in the backlog.
Yeah.
Let's have that conversation, understand it. It might be unpleasant. It might put you in a bad position with your product manager or whatever, but at least it's unambiguous. If it's something we just don't have time to do now and then we might do in the future, then let's keep a list of those that we consider. So that's my idea of how to approach this. I mean, partly you guys need to hold my feet to the fire for really making sure that we do this. Okay, I'm inclined to move along if we're okay. Anybody else have stuff to say on the schedule? All right.
I completed my action item.
Oh, you did? Awesome.
I just put the link right there in the retro.
Then Ben's getting more done than he's now. Well, you're free to just do work. Yeah. I like this. Yeah. Awesome. There are some cross-project goals that we have no choice about at this point because we had the opportunity to participate in the conversation. I don't think they're terribly onerous, but we need to work on them, and we need to in this cycle. One is to remove the use of mocks in favor of mock. Now, I looked at this, and we don't actually use mocks directly. Okay, anybody else can. Please double check what I said.
Yeah.
We don't
How do we use it
put it in our requirements. However, we have, being a lucky project, we have to have a Horizon plugin of our own. Our Horizon requirements and test requirements do not have mocks in them. Nonetheless, if you, and McGinnis tried this, if you remove mocks altogether, it fails because we're plugged into Horizon itself, and we have some kind of transitive dependency on
Well, that could just mean that Horizon has some work to do, and when they do it,
I think that's right. Okay, so I think that this one we just need to log this what I just said basically. That Manila is going to show up. If Manila will fail until Horizon is fixed, but that our plugin itself does not actually use mocks for its unit tests.
you can probably find some Horizon people this week.
I think we'll find it on. He's on PTG.
Awesome. Awesome, that's right. So this is just for people's background, this is a sender core and active guy from Morantis who's now ETL.
What's that?
So we got a good Ivan Colo.
Oh, what's it?
E1.
E1.
Yeah.
Oh, E1.
Yeah. Yeah, so
That's Verizon
we all call him
Farlow?
Ivan.
Yeah.
His name's
Oh,
Ivan
that's
Polo Vinati or something. I apologize for my ignorance, but yeah, we call him E1, which is his IRC panel. Okay, so I can handle this, but if anybody wants to audit for mocks as well, make sure I'm not telling people wrong, appreciate it, you know. But I think we're okay on it, and we just need to communicate this, and they have to fix it anyway. The other one, I think is a great thing anyway, and I believe John already did some work with mutable config, isn't that correct? Was it you who did
What?
some work with
Yeah.
mutable config?
Mutable. Yeah. I just changed the config in the code. And I just tested it, and it is work in Manila.
In Manila?
Yeah.
And did you test it for the debug option by any chance, the debug flag?
Yeah, debug log level config
For log level?
option. Yeah.
And so this is something you've tested, but we haven't yet committed the change, or does it just happen, or tell us about it.
My test step is I just the Manila.conf in about log level, and I just send the sig comment, and just the comment about Manila share service, and it is work. Manila share service, Manila schedule, and Manila API service, and it is also work. And I change it log level from debug to what, and just after I change it, I can get the debug log in the Manila log file. So I just tested that.
Now, are we supposed to mark the different parts of the config as mutable or not in
I
some
will
way?
have to mark the option to the mutable. I will have to.
You mark the option as mutable. So the minimum thing that's being required is that each project would mark the debug option mutable and be able to use the mutable config, you know, so that you should send the signal that it will take effect.
Yeah, is this a new attribute that we inherit from Oslo config?
What?
Is this a new attribute, the mutable that we inherit from Oslo config?
Yeah, it's a new
attribute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So practically speaking, what do we actually have to do to make this work for Manila? It sounds like what we're saying is what the minimum requirement is that we would go and modify our code to say that this option is mutable. And we can leave the rest of them.
We can figure out.
Config, right? We set the debug file.
Yeah, that's the part I don't know. That if just by marking it mutable, does that mean that sending a SIG-HUB would cause Oslo to update the value? I'm not sure.
She's saying she tested it and it works, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you didn't test it using this attribute, right?
Yes. If I didn't mark it, mark new attribute, and it doesn't work.
Oh, you tested marking the attribute and it doesn't work by just doing that.
Yeah, if you didn't add a new attribute, it doesn't work.
If you don't add the new attribute, and
Yes.
it doesn't work, and she added it and it did work, but you haven't yet merged that.
Yeah, I think there is a link. I think it's already merged.
It's already merged, so it works today. We've already done the project goal, you're saying.
Yeah, but I think we still have another options. Maybe we could mark it.
Yes, so that's the next thing. So the minimum requirement is the debug flag.
Yeah.
And you're saying we already did that.
I tested.
You tested it, but we
So-
haven't yet merged
so,
it into
yeah,
our
yeah.
project. So do you
I
want
think
to
you-
do that, or do you want to you have a patch that you could put up that would do the minimum? The minimum's just the debug.
Yeah, I think there need more people to test it.
All right, so we should have more people test it. So is there a patch that you have Garrett review that you want to call our attention to for this, or did you just test it without a Garrett review?
Maybe we could start it. I don't think we need another patch. Unless we need to add new
Okay.
options.
Okay, so you're saying we've already merged the change that we need for the debug flag.
Yeah.
So I was just looking at the Nova ones where it looks like they reference change nozzle logging that set up the debug flag to do the right thing. And they had to change their like process launcher when they start up. So they
More
set
than
some
just a
new-
config option.
Yeah, and then once they change that, it just uses the new, like the config option that got changed in Oslo logging. That one just like worked for them apparently, based on the commit message. But I don't know how you guys do your like process launch stuff, right? May or may not be the same. There's on the like the link to like what Nova did link there. And then it's the enable mutable config in Nova change. Is the one I was looking at.
Yeah, it seems that since we don't have specific config options for debug logs, we just inherit.
Yeah.
They're working, I would assume. And any other config options like timeouts and stuff that we would like to change, we need to add the mutable attribute to each config option and test those to make sure that they change without restarting the service.
So I didn't get to the part why the debug is working, because you just change the flag in the service. Is it by default now on Oslo service set as mutable?
I think so. That's what it looks like.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we inherit the debug option from Oslo. So shouldn't we enumerate all the settings that we would like to be mutable besides debug?
So there are two things, okay? So it shouldn't merge the change to the startup that you're talking about. The review right here, I reviewed it, I'm trying to get you it familiar. But it changes Manila service.py, right? So that code is merged, so we go return service project launcher, and we pass the restart method intake.
So yeah, it should be ready to go.
So I think it's ready to go. The question now, what I was unclear on is then we mark different parts of the config as mutable or not. Did we already mark debug as mutable? That's not in this.
I believe that's inherited.
Yeah,
That's
That is
inherited.
inherited.
That's what you're saying. So you don't have to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So we've met the cross-project goal already.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm just, it was the part I was missing, even though you said it very clearly, was we don't have to do anything extra once it's done for debug. Now, for anything else, we would need to, other than debug. There's nothing else inherited.
I mean, anything in the Oslo libraries that you guys are picking on, whatever they change.
Whatever they changed in that.
Any config option that we declare needs to be individually marked.
Right. So anything we inherited is safe anyway, and we got it perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So are there other config options that we care about in this cycle? I mean, they seem to me they can be done piecemeal. If somebody comes up with one and convinces people it doesn't require a spec, right? They could say, look, this is obviously mutable. It's you know, somewhere between M2 and M3. And somebody proposes a review that says config foo is mutable. I'm going to change the config option on it. It just needs to go through Garrett, and then persuade people, and the reviewers need to ask, well, is this really, could we get in trouble if we update it or not, right? And we can talk it through. So we can do this somewhat piecemeal, which is not to say that we shouldn't have a conversation about, is there anything else we want to make sure and address? So is there some kind of config that we think is mutable that we really want to make sure and do as early as possible?
Yeah, I think pretty much every config option that is related to timeouts that an administrator may want to tweak without restarting the service may be considered to be mutable. Because it's just a number regarding the time something waits or until it reaches before failing on operation. So it's just a number.
And maybe I think we should go through all options and see which options could be mutable. Because
So
there are a
who wants
lot of
to do that?
options.
There are a lot of things that are good ideas to do. And my question is this something someone wants to take on and do, to go through them all? Or do we want to just say, okay, we did the debug and we can do others opportunistically?
I think having the mechanism working would be a step forward.
We have the mechanism working. Now the question is, do we want to review our config and categorize it?
There are config options that are related to vendors. We would need maybe to check whether the vendor wants to make their configuration options mutable.
I think these vendors another whole big topic and how it would be possible to reload a driver, for example.
Right.
But for internal options,
there are some cases where an option could be changed without messing up the operation of the driver.
Yeah, but the driver maintainer.
So can we say driver
maintainers should care only about
their own?
Yeah, driver maintainers should be responsible for.
They care about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we take the non-vendor specific configuration. And is there someone who wants to drive reviewing that in this cycle?
Aren't there certain operations that you really don't want to allow changes in the driver to happen while other operations are going on? So shouldn't we?
I'm not saying that we wouldn't review the drivers. I'm just saying we're not. They have to propose to the community, and we have to say, is it safe? So they could do harm by saying something's mutable that's not to the public good.
I guess what I'm suggesting is you want to put something in place that's a little bit from driver changes being changed while in operation, or that driver is actively being taken out.
Oh,
because we would definitely have that problem with Cinder, because there's definitely things that we don't want to have changed while you're doing a copy bond to image or something like that. We would change the back end URL or credentials or something like that. I think it's kind of dangerous just to wildly allow any driver changes to happen at any time.
But isn't the part review like?
Yeah, on a case-by-case basis, I think you can look at some of them and say, okay, this one is not going to be dangerous if we change it, whereas other ones probably would be. I mean, the bigger question is, well, how, for ones that are on the border, you don't know, how do you test it? That might be hard.
I guess what I'm kind of asking is, does it make sense to have something put into just the Manila code base that doesn't allow that? Unblockers, or
do we know how to do that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a different question.
Everybody is different. It's like
Yeah, I mean, thinking of the NetApp one, I could think of a handful where we would definitely say, because it's just a flag that we check sometimes, and if it's said we do one thing, if it's not said we do a different thing, and so it doesn't matter if we change it. The other ones, yeah, it would be a big deal.
Right now, I think, we have to say the presumption is that it's not safe. And you have to make a case that it is safe, but explain to us why it is safe. So debug safe, we're aware of that, and we can do it.
Yeah.
But if you come in with your back end and say, just trust me, this is safe, then there's a conversation to be had. I mean, because I don't know the mechanism to put in place right now that would do it. Would it be great? Yeah. If you've got it to share with us, let's look at it. In the meantime, it's up to reviewers to not just accept blindly the idea that it is safe. So, but we were saying it's driver's responsibility to even pose the, you have a back end, we're going to consider it all immutable unless you come forward and explain that this config should be immutable and fine. Now, for the non-driver code, the question was, does anyone want to undertake the job of going through and trying to categorize stuff? And if they do, I would suggest they just try to do a pass where they say these are clearly safely mutable. There might be some gray ones, leave the gray ones immutable for now.
I feel like we are falling in a state now where we know things that need to be done and we sometimes want to do, but not always we depend only on us and ourselves to go pick the thing to do, and that probably is happening with all people here.
Yeah, I was talking about that with yesterday.
And maybe we should just have a list of everything that we as community want to do and we need to do, and then as we go home, we can try to get some space and buffer.
We're not going to get it. If someone had raised their hand right now and said, "I'm enthusiastic about this and I want to work on that," then we note that and put it as an action item. We did not get that result.
Yeah.
So what we can say is, okay, we met the community goal. That's cool, and we'll put this on the list of work that anybody can pick up. And they can pick it up. They can pick it up either piecemeal. They can say, here's one, cherry pick, here's a clearly mutable piece of config. I want to propose it without, and they're not required to go do the whole thing.
Yeah.
If they want to do the whole thing, that's fine. Okay. And that way we can make progress on it.
So, sorry.
Hey, Jay.
Hi.
Welcome.
I just saw that this was on the list of discussion and came over. So your goal is to get the minimum working, which is logging. Is that what I just heard?
Yeah. That's done.
Okay. And we've got that done for Cinder as well. I've got an option for it. But we didn't do it through the configs. We did it through the stuff that Gorka added. And the change log.
And that's a different thing than what we're doing.
Okay. So
we can have Ben and Gorka fight about that one because they have a different view of that. But what we have done, just to be clear, is just enable what we inherit from Oslo. So you correct me if I miss. Patrick, you said it better than I. Go ahead and state.
So the same change Nova did, they did set the service to have the restart policy thing and mutate the logs, and it muted the config, and the Oslo logging library was already changed to have mutate set on that, the debug config option.
Okay. So we should do the same thing in Cinder then.
Yeah. You should. If you do that in Cinder, it would support to change the config on both ways. Yeah. API and change the.
And you'll see an example of you right here in the API. So one liner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that meets the minimum requirement. Then the next thing we talked about was, well, what about all the other config that could be mutable?
Yeah.
And what we said is, first of all, backend specific config. Backends are responsible for proposing that a piece of their config is mutable. We're not going to pay attention to it.
Okay.
They're not decisive. They have to persuade the community that it's really safe to treat it as mutable. But they will drive the agenda for any backend specific config to be marked as mutable.
Okay.
And that we will, we're going to maintain a nobody raised their hand and said, I wanted to review everything else and do it as one big proposal. So we're going to make incremental progress on it. We'll maintain a backlog, and somebody can see, hey, this one's clearly mutable. I want to propose that community, and we'll just do it over the course of the release and make some progress. Okay. So that's our plan. And we'll send her in something, but we'll talk. If you guys end up with a better approach at some point, we'll steal it from you.
Okay. And vice versa.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's the thinking at the moment. Okay.
Okay. So I will drop this in our meeting last year, but we've got a decent participation.
Cool. Yeah, we've got a fair number of Senator people in here, so we value the input.
Yeah, I'll bring it up in our meetings this week.
We already have that code exactly in place in the process.
Yeah.
Same
Oh,
exact thing.
same stuff. Yeah, cool.
It's already this week.
Cool. So it's just a matter of, you know, we should test it a little bit more at some point or something. I mean, just use it and make sure that we're okay. Okay, cool. So thanks, Sean, for doing this proactively.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So those are the two cross-project Rocky goals, and we're in relatively good shape for them, it seems like. And they shouldn't really compete with other work we need to do, which is good news. Sometimes you end up with cross-project goals that end up being quite a bit of work and wasn't something that's really your own project's priority. So, Shung, you put on here, do we need to mark some other configuration as mutable? Are there particular items? The answer is yes, and we have to figure out which ones. Are there particular ones that you want to do soon?
I just figure out this one.
Yeah, so this one's of interest to you. So
yes,
what we're saying is just feel free to go up and post a review, and when you do, you'll need to be able to explain to people why it's safe to have it as mutable. And we're not requiring that you figure out all of the mutable ones before you can propose a review for one of them. Right? We can do it incrementally. Okay. Python 3 I put on here because even though it's not an official cross-project initiative at the moment, you may have seen discussion of it heating up. And Doug Hellman recently sent out an email with his idea of the status of each project at this point, and asks us to update it and correct it and everything. My impression of the state of Manila and Python 3 is that Manila, like the other projects in Mitaka, I believe, introduced Python 3.x unit tests for, and we got that working, and that was kind of a cross-project goal, and not every project did, but we were in shape in terms of that. That leaves a gap, John. That leaves a gap for us in that we have our functional tempest tests and so on are still running under Python 2. So if you think about, backing up for a second, why is this a hot issue? Okay, upstream support for Python 2 is supposedly going away in 2020. First. Second, what does that mean? Yes, so what does that mean? That means that distros and other ways of getting OpenStack are cutting over to Python 3. And some of them, I don't know what's happening with Red Hat, and Red Hat hasn't announced anything publicly, but like any other distro, there are conversations going on about when are we going to move from Python 2 to Python 3? Do we do it? Do we cut over, do a hard cut over, or do we have to pay the expense of supporting both distros? So let's take Debian as an example, though, because they're doing it right now. Is they're cutting to Python 3 and doing a hard cut, from what I can tell.
They've had both Pi 2 and Pi 3 for some time.
Yeah, but there's a good chance that between now and 2020, maybe even just a couple of years, right, that we're going to see distros switching over to Python 3 and maybe not having Python 2 support. So the OpenStack community as a whole is kind of going, wait, we better get moving on this. So what shape is Manila in terms of right, is our unit test work under Python 3. Zigo went and Thomas Boiron or whatever, Zigo, the Debian distro guy, went through and ran tests on a bunch of projects, including Manila, with Python 3.6. He initially reported that 90 Tempest tests were failing, 90 unit tests or something were failing with 3.6. He twiddled something with SQL Alchemy and it went down to like, there's some EMC backend tests that are failing, but there's just a handful of them. So it's a small issue to address the unit tests. We'll get the EMC backend people to fix that, their unit tests. That said, we've never really run the functional tests with Python 3. So I think we need to begin converting them over to running Python 3 by introducing parallel jobs and getting them to work. Does that seem like a reasonable thing to do? What are you doing in Center?
That's what we did.
Do you have your Tempest test running in Python 3?
Yeah, I think we're using a global, just Tempest type 3 job. I guess Manila probably is going to have a little bit of a custom one.
Because we have more different, we have Tempest tests that test different aspects of things.
I think essentially what you have to do is just create a job that runs that stuff with the Python 3 option.
Okay. Our CentOS jobs are going to have to change to Fedora or back to Ubuntu because CentOS doesn't support Python 3. So that's a pain, but we got to do that. But, so this is work we really need to do this cycle, is I guess what I'm asserting. Because if we have a year or so till distros actually cut over, we probably have more than one cycle to get this done, but there's no reason why we shouldn't just do it now.
I got the impression that Debian
Debian is doing it, but there's not a whole lot. Debian is doing it right now, so there's not a whole lot we can try to get it fixed soon, early in the cycle. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, having Manila broken in Debian seems like a problem for both them and us. Right?
Having Tempest tests not run in Debian is not necessarily the same as having Manila broken in Debian.
No, in fact, we have checks like I just posted link to the wiki page for Python there for like the whole community. And Manila client, and the Python, PyMaya client, and there's no particular Manila that has Python 3. So we are covered on the front. Is Tempest maybe Manila UI?
Manila UI is a bit different. Some of that is like Manila UI, we don't even have functional tests running. Unit tests running with Python 3. So it was Manila UI is easy to overload, and we've done no work on Python 3 in Manila UI. You can look through there, and we've got to make a lot of changes in the code itself.
I guess what I'm saying is if I install Debian SID and then I can install Manila, well, it's broken.
We don't know, right?
Yeah, but if the answer is yes, then we should consider that bug was fixed. And if it's something to do with SQL Alchemy or something that's just not Python compatible in our code, but we need to identify those bugs.
Right.
Fix them like any other bug.
Right.
This is a bug that's affecting real customers. Not that people actually run Manila on Debian SID, that would be kind of crazy. In the very near future, SID would become stable. Sure, not in the very. I know how slow Debian is.
No, I mean
at some point in the future.
So I guess we're agreeing that this is high priority work for us. I mean that's the first question, and what this is means addressing any bugs that come up, like SQL alchemy stuff, it breaks even unit tests. But then also getting our Tempest test to run under Python 3. Those are the things, apart from the UI, those are the things we can do.
But getting Tempest to run under Python 3 is a great way to uncover the bugs you have to know about.
So at one point, I think a couple of years ago, there was an audit of all requirements used by OpenStack for Python 3 support. Does the problems were included in that?
Included in that?
Did anyone ever look at Manila's requirements to see if they support Python 3? Because that was done globally for OpenStack a long time.
Everything in our requirements is also in global requirements.
This is the work that, I can't think of his name at the moment. Victor Spencer was driving. And yes, he was looking at vanilla as well on that scan.
That also forced our third-party libraries, like our driver libraries, flight libraries, to upgrade the Python 3 compatibility, because I have to do that sort of big hard left-hand driver person.
Right. And wasn't that part of what you were just talking about, that survey? That was what Victor drove or initiated. So and we were just saying we're okay in terms of that. It's just that we're not running the Tempest tests.
Yeah, and we also need to figure out if only our Manila Tempest plugin or if Tempest as a whole. And if we are running things like if we are missing something else on that side.
So if Sender's using the core part of Tempest is the only plugin that's that may need some changes. So who's interested in working on this? We'll talk about the UI one separately.
I'm taking this.
You're taking this, honestly. Good. Awesome. Okay. I mean, I knew you had been driving. Okay. Now, the UI is a separable piece. So you don't have to take that necessarily because, when you raise your hand for this part, you can raise it for the UI too or not. For the UI, we need to make, I looked in core Horizon code, made, I don't know, over 10 commits relevant to converting to Type 3 readiness, and they did it between like 2015 and 2017. So probably we could go through their commit record and say, okay, here's where they use 6.text type, everywhere, and made all those changes on this commit. And here's where they made these and so on, and then basically use the same kind of scan that Victor did on vanilla proper. So I mean, to Eric's question, I think they didn't look at the UI when they did that, but they looked at the rest of vanilla. Are you driving that as well?
Go check Manila.
Okay. And when I say driving it, you can come to the meetings and say, we need a volunteer to do this part of it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do it all. Okay, you're going to drive it and keep an Etherpad or something that has the work we need to do. Okay. Are you showing in the AI section at this point? I'm not writing on the Etherpad. You'll put yourself in there. Okay. We have, an hour till lunch? And just quickly looking ahead, shortly after lunch or so, thanks, Julie, for coming by. We have a few topics that haven't, like Amit put, and Guy put topics that we haven't scheduled in here. We'll probably fit them in Friday. If you guys have a particular time that you think they ought to be talked about, instead, let us know.